You lived an entire life before the age of 3. You were born. You opened your eyes for the first time. You heard your mother's voice before you even understood what a voice was. You felt warmth. You felt hunger. You learned how to move your body. You took your first steps. You said your first word, and you remember none of it. Not a single moment. Most people assume the answer is simple. Your brain wasn't ready yet. You were too young. But that explanation doesn't actually hold up because the truth is far stranger. Your baby brain wasn't failing to record your life. It was recording everything. Your memories existed. They were just erased. Back in 1905, Sigmund Freud gave this mystery a name: infantile amnesia, the idea that we all forget the earliest years of our lives. For a long time, this sounded like a limitation, as if babies simply couldn't form memories at all. But that's not true. In the 1980s, psychologist Carolyn Rovi Collier ran a simple but powerful experiment. She tied a ribbon from a baby's ankle to a mobile hanging above their crib. The moment the baby kicked, the mobile moved, and the baby learned, very quickly, that their movement could control the world. They kept kicking again and again, fascinated by cause and effect. But here's the part that changes everything. When those same babies returned days later, they remembered. They started kicking immediately, as if no time had passed. Even 2-month-old infants could hold that memory for a short time, and 6-month-olds could remember for weeks. So babies can learn, they can store information, and they can recall it, and yet, by adulthood, it's all gone. Every trace. So what happened? The first part of the answer is structural. Deep inside your brain is a small curved structure called the hippocampus, the engine of memory. It takes your experiences, birthdays, conversations, ordinary moments, and turns them into episodes you can replay later. In adults, the hippocampus works alongside the prefrontal cortex to tag, organize, and store these memories long-term. But in infants, this system is unfinished. The connections are still being built, key regions are still wiring themselves together, and the overall network is incomplete. So your baby brain could form short-term memories, but it struggled to lock them into long-term storage. That explains part of the problem, but not all of it, because even fragile systems don't usually erase everything. And this is where things get strange. In 2014, neuroscientists Sheena Jocelyn and Paul Franklin proposed something almost impossible. What if the very process that builds your brain is also the process that destroys your memories? In early childhood, your brain is growing at an extreme rate. Inside the hippocampus, new neurons are being created constantly in a process called neurogenesis. It's essential. These new cells are what allow your brain to develop, adapt, and become more complex. But there's a cost. Every time a new neuron integrates into an existing network, it slightly rewires the system. And in doing so, it disrupts the connections that were already there. The same. Connections holding your memories. To test this, they ran experiments on mice. When they increased neurogenesis in adult mice, those mice began forgetting things they had already learned. And when they slowed neurogenesis in young mice, those mice held on to memories far longer than they normally would. The conclusion was unsettling. Your baby brain wasn't too weak to hold memories. It was too busy growing. The same explosion of development that allowed you to become who you are was constantly overwriting the person you used to be, building new structures so rapidly that it kept tearing down the old ones in the process. Your earliest memories weren't lost because they were never saved. They were lost because your brain kept rebuilding itself on top of them. But even that isn't the full story, because memory isn't just about storage. It's about identity. To form what scientists call autobiographical memory, the kind where you are the main character in a story you can replay, you need something fundamental, a sense of self. You need to understand that you exist as an individual, that experiences are happening to you. Developmental psychologists Mark Howe and Mary Courage argued that this is the missing piece. Before around 18 to 24 months, infants don't recognize themselves as separate individuals. In a classic test, a small mark is placed on a baby's face and they're shown a mirror. Before 18 months, they treat the reflection like another child and don't touch the mark. But after that age, something changes. They reach for their own face. They recognize, that's me. And that moment of self-recognition closely aligns with the earliest age we can form lasting personal memories, which leads to a strange conclusion. You can't remember being a baby because, in a very real sense, there was no you yet. not the version of you that exists now. There was no internal narrator, no identity-tying moments together into a story. Experiences were happening, but they weren't being assigned to a stable self, and without that, memories have nothing to anchor to. And there's one final layer: language. Psychologist Catherine Nelson found that language doesn't just describe memories, it structures them. Before you could speak, your experiences were raw: sounds, colors, emotions, sensations, all unorganized and fleeting. Without words, they had no framework, no labels, no narrative to hold them in place. But once children begin to speak, and more importantly, once they begin having conversations about the past, something changes. Remember when we went to the park? Remember your birthday? Those moments start to stick. Language gives memory a skeleton, and without it, experiences are like water with no container. They exist briefly, then disappear. And this isn't just theory. Psychologist Chi Wang found that the age of your earliest memory actually depends on your culture. In Western cultures, where parents often narrate experiences and build personal stories, people tend to remember back to around age 3.5. Among the Maori in New Zealand, where storytelling and personal history are deeply emphasized, memories can go back as early as 2.5, while in some East Asian cultures, where early narratives focus less on the individual, first memories often start later, around age 4 or beyond. Your culture doesn't just shape how you think, it shapes how far back you can remember. So what actually happened to your earliest years? It wasn't one failure, it was a perfect storm. Your hippocampus wasn't fully developed. Your brain was rewriting itself through rapid growth. You had no stable sense of self, and you had no language to organize your experiences. Every system required for long-term memory was either incomplete or actively changing, and together, they erased everything. Every human being who has ever lived went through this. Everyone you know has a blank space where the first years of their life should be. And the reason isn't that your brain was too simple, it's that your brain was doing something far more important than remembering. It was building itself, it was becoming you, and to do that it had to destroy the person who came before.